All right, welcome back to another episode of Memories with Mumbo. We have audibled. I think last time we did a Memories with Mumbo, we said maybe we were going to talk elk because this was going to come out right about elk season, sometime in the first week or two of elk season. But with the lack of stories of elk stories between Mumbo and myself, we're just gonna kind of skip that. We'll jump straight into the whitetail. We got plenty more whitetail stories that we can tell. So, um, Dad, how's it going?
Well, doing good.
Yeah,
Doing good.
this is the big week. We're recording this on the 3rd of September, and so this weekend coming up is the induction into the Hall of Fame weekend.
Yeah, looking forward to it. Look, it'd be a fun weekend. Have you and Caitlin out and Bree and all the former teammates of mine that are coming. It's gonna be a good weekend. Fun.
Yeah, we're getting all excited about it. We went shopping this past weekend for some updated clothing, um, some stuff that we thought was maybe more fitting than what we already had in the closet for at least the semi-formal event on Friday, and then who knows what we'll end up doing Saturday. We just deciding to bring some options for Saturday. Plus,
Yeah.
I needed to revamp my jean inventory. I was down to like one pair and it was missing a belt loop and had some holes starting to wear. And I was like, well, let's just go get a couple pair of jeans. So we went and got a couple pair of jeans for me, and Caitlin got some stuff. So we're ready to go.
Good. Good to go.
Yep.
Should be a cool weekend. Shouldn't be too hot.
Yeah. That's what we were looking at. The weather should be a nice weekend. It shouldn't be cold, hot. It'll be nice. It'll be fun.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep. So I guess before we get into some whitetail stories, you have been elk hunting the last like week or two up there in Wyoming. You had alluded to it, I think, in a past episode. If not, it was just to me. But how's the elk hunting for 2025 going for you?
Oh, it's going slow. It's still plenty warm, and right now we took a drive out the other night, just kind of driving around a friend's loop, he calls it. It's kept about a 2 mile drive around the ranch and some areas, and we did end up finding a herd on another property that's probably, I don't know, 75 to 100 elk in there, and he'd been glassing from uh, from quite a long ways off his patio, off his deck. And he claimed, he said there's two really good ones in there, and so we go out and we're driving another part of this loop. Look, actually, we were looking for deer at that time because we have we're in the process of trying to get permission onto that, and he's trying to lease it. So we went to that. Didn't see any, deer worth spending too much time looking at. And kept going, and we're coming up on where this big herd was, and he had said that it's probably about a third of the herd was down there, and like I said, there were 75 to 100 of them down there, and all of a sudden, in the back of his side by side, his wife says, "Well, there's one right out there." I look to the right, and there's a bull, and he's 350 to 375. Um, just a good, healthy, quality bull. Like I said, whale tails were probably 14 to 16 inches long. Just good, symmetrical, heavy bull. Wasn't talking why he was out there all by himself. I have no idea. I think he was probably coming down from the hill and meeting up with all the girls down there, and maybe getting up his nerves, because I'm sure there's going to be a fight to come
Yeah.
with, with the two other supposedly good ones that were in there. And unfortunately, the herd was sitting on a circle hayfield that was in the back of a ranch that was, private property that they lease out to an outfitter. So we can all always just look at them and hope they make a wrong turn one of these days and come somewhere where we can shoot them.
Yeah. Come on the other side of the
They do.
fence.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Story of our lives, right?
Yep.
Um, but they do migrate, and he's been watching them where they go, and there's places uh, that we can get a chance to get a crack at one of them if uh, if if they're again right timing, right time, right place, um, which isn't really the way I hunt
Yeah.
because I'm never right time or never in the right place at the time. Um, but that being said, I got a cow tag anyway, so it's just fun to look at those bulls. And here in the next week to 2 weeks, they're going to start talking, and there's places along that road that you can just stop and just down the windows and listen to them,
Yeah.
until it's after dark. I mean, it's a real fun experience. So looking forward to that. Been out to the ranch, driving around, and doing my sits, and the elk just aren't there yet. There again, I might have to have a little intel when they're coming through. Otherwise, it's just going out every morning, every night, for sure. Um, on the meadows,
Yeah.
there might be a long shot up there because I think in the mornings they're up high and they're coming down. So we'll just see what happens.
Yeah.
Just keep hunting.
Yeah. So it is a cow tag, but it's not like and it's kind of over the counter. I don't know. I guess explain it for the listeners and watchers. What kind of tag you have?
Yeah, it's a mom and I were just thinking of the word last night. Declamation,
Depredation
declamation, depredation
or deprivation?
tag, deprivation. I go, can't even say it. Um, anyway, it's an unlimited tag. It's cow calf only, and it goes early season all the way through late season in our county. They're just trying to thin out um, a herd that's getting out of hand. Like I said, there'll be 300, 350 in the herd that's down south. And, talking with a couple people that know some biologists or had been talking to them, that there could be upwards to the same herd a little bit north with a little bit smaller herd in the middle. And we're talking maybe a 20-mile span going, from where we're at 30 miles west. So there's a lot of elk in the area. Um, finding them on the right ranch, finding them on the right piece of land is a challenge.
Right.
Yeah. So and you can get, like I said, it's unlimited. If there's a guy out there that really needs 3 or 4 elk and he knows where they're at and he can go get 3 or 4 tags, more power to him.
Right.
The ranchers are just having that hard of a time, and Game and Fish has been working with them, and that was their solution as of now, which is a good solution as long as the people are doing good things with
Yeah.
the animals that. So
Do it right. That would be interesting. You had told me this a time or two before, and so I was starting to kind of think, kind of how they do it here for when you get your animals or your deer tested for CWD. You They call it the earn a buck system, um, and so not necessarily earn a bowl because for the same year, but if you take or if you harvest and donate 2 cows, that gets you like a preference point for the next year or something like that. I think that'd be something that I think would maybe even incentivize it a little bit more. Maybe some people would get a little carried away with it and have some greed that would come out of that. But um, I think some sort of like earnable or earn a point type system where you take a couple
yeah,
cows and earn yourself some preference points or something just to incentivize helping out the herd size.
right, yeah. Well, they would have to initiate and really start up the. Right now, it's just a at will draw
Yeah.
for for non-residents. The preference points are in place.
Right.
Um, so they would have to initiate some type of a draw or preference on where you stand. I don't know how that would happen, but yeah, in theory, that's a good idea. Um, I'd love to see it because I've been here for 6 years as a resident this go around, and haven't drawn a bull tag yet. So
Right.
um, we're talking to some people that get it every year, or 6 out of 7 years, and talk to others that have been here a resident, and the only time they ever drew was when they were sick or something. I don't know what she was telling me. Um, but they've been here for many years. I don't know how many for sure, but only drawn one time.
Hmm.
So the chance of it.
Yeah, I would think it would just be interesting. I mean, it probably would turn into having to jump through a bunch of hoops and red tape and whatever, and you have to fill out all the forms, whatever, and do it through the state and make sure
Right.
you're doing it through the right people and certified, whatever, this, that, butchers and, whatever. But it would be good if you could, hey, I helped out the herd by taking out 2 cows this year and donated them through the state, and now kick back on for next year's draw. I got an extra bonus point added to my name or
Right.
whatever. That'd be
Yeah.
pretty good
And
incentive.
I know that there were. I mean, there's people that I talk to and on a regular basis, some of them, and they got multiple elk last year that went out with this tag.
Yeah.
Uh, and like Tim, he's a fireman. He got one just for the firehouse, so he took it down and you know processed processed that cow and just kept it in the freezer at the firehouse, and
Yeah.
that's kind of so. Then another guy, I think he got four cows. He said that him and his family had two of them, and then he took care of some other people in Glendo that were in need
Hmm.
for red meat. So nothing better than a good elk. So
Yeah. Literally. That's the best stuff you
yep,
can get for sure.
yep, yep. So we'll just cross our fingers. Hopefully, we'll be able to run across one this year.
Yeah. We'll keep the listeners updated as the hunting season goes by. So, um, I guess with that, we'll jump into some whitetail stories. You've got quite a few whitetail on the wall, and quite a few other hunting of whitetail experiences. So, um, I guess when was the first like whitetail hunt that you can remember?
Oh, geez. First whitetail hunt. We were talking about it earlier. Um, your papa, grandpa, uh, from Rollins, Jim Farver, and I went up to uh, um, just past Sundance. I can't remember the name of the little town, Hewlett, Hewlett, Montana, and it's right on the borderline, just north, probably northwest, maybe a little bit from Sundance. Um, I had when we were up in Sheridan, and I was coaching the softball or Legion baseball team there. Um, Two of the boys that were playing, the Phillips brothers, Ben and Blaine, their family, their dad had a quarry, a rock quarry, stone quarry, over there, so they allowed us to come over and stay with them, and Papa and I went up there, and we stayed there for a weekend, and ended up shooting two. We shot a whitetail and a mule deer.
Mm,
A nice 4 point mule deer, which at the time I hadn't shot too many mule deer either. And this was, well, what was it, 30 some years ago, 34 years ago. Um, so we pulled into town and stayed with them and went out, and they'd told us all kinds of these stories about these big whitetail, and really, to be honest, I think this might have been, now that I think about it, it was our second trip, because our first trip, I shot a little whitetail that was probably about that tall. Papa said, "There he is, kill him," and I just turned and on the run and shot him. And I'd never had a whitetail before. Matter of fact, I don't know that I'd ever seen one in the wild. When I was actually hunting,
yeah.
driving by him, maybe seeing the tail flag up and wave it. They're running through the
Right.
river bottom, but um. So anyway, that was the first one, and then when Papa and I went up this time, we had gone, and it was kind of, I don't even know what it was, a more of a creek than it was a river. Um, and he had walked down. I don't know how he got across, um, but either way, he'd got himself on the other side of this creek, and he was kind of pushing these deer. Don't know if he knew what he was pushing or not, but these deer all popped up and jumped, hopped up on the hill, and doe, 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 buck, boom. and it just rolled him, tumbled him, and well, I went over and looked at, and it was probably 75 to 100 yards. So I shot, watched him there, didn't get up. So I knew he was down, walked over, checked him. Pretty soon I heard this, Mulvaney. And I looked over, and like I said, I was kind of up on the top of this flat, and the river kind of bend. We were in a kind of like a point in this river, and I walked over to the river, and it was probably a good 15 feet down from this bank. And I looked, Mulvaney, God damn it, get over here and help me. I said, where you at, Jim? I looked straight down, and he was in this river. He'd fallen. It was iced over, and evidently where he walked over downriver, it was shallow and solid enough that he could walk straight across. Well, I guess without even thinking, once he heard my shot, he just found a place and walked over and didn't realize that it was a little bit deeper there. And he was probably in about, for sure waist high, where the bend of this creek just kind of went through, and I think he got into a little place that was a little bit deeper than he thought, and the ice wasn't really. he was fit to be tied. He couldn't get up by himself, and ended up, I left everything there and went down and helped him out. I finally got him out, got him across the river, and ended up he was helping for a while, to get this deer dressed out, and we finally just pulled the truck down and turned the heater on for him so he could dry out while I finished buck and threw him in the back, and off we went. And we got about, not even a quarter mile back towards the road, and up popped two pretty nice mule deer. And I was saying pretty nice for up there, just a good solid 4-point is nice. And it was both of them were very symmetrical, 4 on each side, and the one was a little darker horn that I hadn't really seen too much of. So went ahead and got out, and he goes, "Oh, go ahead and shoot him too." So we got both of them put up. I got a picture. Oh, I'd love to find. Like I said, this was years ago, so it was back when we had copies of the photos, and I know somewhere I got a picture with me and 2 buck deer, whitetail and mule deer, and Jim, I probably took that picture from inside the truck in the heater going, and drag the whitetail out of the truck, set it next to the mule deer, got the mule deer, get it dressed out, and then take a picture of the 2 of them. And it was quite the experience, but that was definitely one that it's not on the wall. It wasn't anything special, but
yeah,
it was definitely a memory. That's for sure.
yeah, that's funny.
That's for sure.
That's funny. So
Then after that, we started. It really started. That was about the extent there, and then Mark Ulish and I, matter of fact, we drew a tag. We had antelope hunt, and I got a bull elk down north or south of Rollins, and told him about some of the deer that were there, and Mark really wanted to chase a mule deer, so we put in for a Wyoming tag, and like I said earlier, non-residents all draw, straight draw.
yeah,
And at the time, I don't believe it was preference points, but now it is. Anyway, we put in for a couple of the areas that Uncle Mike had told me about, and Jim. And then for some unknown reason, I don't know if we actually did it or not, but we get our tags back, and we were successful. Open up the envelope and saw this, might be 65, area 65 maybe, which is just north of here. And I thought, and at the time, I had no idea where Area 65 was. It wasn't an area that I was familiar with. Called up Mike, Uncle Mike, and asked him. Well, he pulled out his map. He said, "Well, that's over by Douglas, up by Casper." So, I don't know how in the heck we ended up with that, but we ended up with it. Got a hold of a game biologist with Game and Fish, and gave us a couple ranch names, and I think the first one Mark called. I was working, I think, and he had off. I think I had a referee or something. He uh he called this number that he had, and the rancher had ended up he had passed away a couple months prior to this, and he got a hold of the rancher's wife, and she just said, "Well, yeah, come on out. I I got no problem with you coming out." She said, "All you can shoot though, all I want you shooting at is my whitetail." She says, "I really want to keep my mule deer around, and absolutely no shooting my turkeys." So she had her little ranch pets other than her cattle, and the whitetail were just a nuisance to her, eating up her grain and her grass, I guess, or hay. So we went down there for a couple weekends. We stayed at the hotel in Douglas. Now fast forward, I'm living 18 miles south of there.
Yeah.
But this was right on the Platte River. This ranch went through, and we had good hunting. Saw a lot of deer, but nothing really that we could shoot. Buck wise is very small, if not even didn't even see any. Well, then finally we had a couple bucks and there again, it was kind of a drive. Mark went and he was going to walk this little gully, and I was going to stay up top and walk around the point. And they must have been bedded down between us somewhere, and they chose to run right by me. And on the run, it was almost like pheasant hunting on the run, just kind of boom, make sure you follow through with like you're shooting sporting clay with a shotgun. And he just tumbled like, shooting a wild coyote. And it was a good one. For the longest, I had just basket horn. I mean, it wasn't anything special, but it at that time was the neatest, symmetrical, and actually had points. Before that, I think the big, like I said, was probably about a 6-inch spike or fork horn.
Yeah.
Well, that had 5 on each side, and double brow tines. It's kind of cool buck, just basket horn.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then Mark went, we got him taken care of. And as we were walking out to go to get the truck to come get it, another one went by and stopped out there, and Mark got one, and it was almost identical to the same one I shot, except it only had single brow tines instead of doubles. So we got 2 of them there. That was kind of a fun, unique hunt. And then, like I said, after that, it just really turned into archery.
Yeah.
Started archery whitetail hunting in eastern Colorado, and gradually went south. I was up by Sterling for the longest time, probably 5 or 6 years, going up there and hunting public land.
Hmm.
And then talked to a good friend of ours, Mike Patton. No, 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 no. That was before I even met Mike. Or yeah, Mike. Mark Ulishny had said that Area 103 is supposed to be really, really good whitetail bucks. Better opportunities. So we started putting down in there, and at the time it was every third year you'd draw, and so we put in 109 across the road. We'd draw that every year in between, and then that third year we'd get the 103.
Hmm.
Um, and that's where I got my first decent whitetail, nothing on the wall, but just a good quality deer for a real green archery hunter.
Hmm.
I one, maybe 2 up by Sterling in the few years that we were there. It was tough hunting. It was pretty. There was a lot of human traffic there, so
Yeah.
they have what was Tamarack. Tamarack. They had the blinds. There was probably 22 sections of acreage that went right along the river, whatever river that was there. It must have been maybe the Platte, South Platte, maybe going towards Ogallala.
Yeah.
But that's and it was good duck hunting, and I primarily that, and then early it was for whitetail, for deer hunting. So you could only have one person. You'd have to go sign in for that plot. And so we always, you always had a place by yourself, but walking across or down by the river, or if you might be close to the border of your plot and the other guy's close to the border that you're on from the other side, you could be hunting, you know, 50 feet from each other and not even know it until the sun comes up. So,
Yeah.
uh, but anyway, we got got there, and like I said, we got a couple decent deer. I know that Tim, he was hunting that area with me for a couple years when he finally got him into it, and he had stuck a nice one, and he never could find it. Went over road, and we talked to Jeff, the game warden. We never could track it down. He even went out with us, but then from there, like I said, went over to 103, um, and that was Bonnie, where I think there was still about half the water, if not a quarter of the water, left in the lake because they were in the process of draining it, and it's dry now.
Hmm.
But it was still enough there that it was a good hunter. It was a good hunting place there. It held a lot of big deer, and I'm sure it probably still does. The Republican still goes through there, and I'm being in Colorado. I'm sure a lot of people still go out there and hunt. All the camp spots are still there, and places that you can drive. You don't have to park. You don't have to pay anymore. But
Hmm.
um, I think a guy could probably go down there and still find good deer. We had one. Uh, like I said, it was nothing. The deer were gradually getting better. Quality wise, a little bigger bodied, bigger antlered. Nothing, really wall worthy, if you will. And
Yeah.
um, but it was fun, and it was a challenge. It was something new, and then when I got into later on there, and then moving over into Kansas, started really judging deer and not necessarily managing, but I guess in the long run, that's what we've been doing. We're looking for 4-year-olds or better, ideally.
Hmm.
Um, Try not to take any small deer. I know that we all have. We've taken some spindlies.
Yep.
Last year I feel like was the really turning point for me. It was the first time I'd drawn Kansas that I was unsuccessful, and it was because I had a bad shot. It was probably the I don't know if it would have scored as good as my best, but it was a good symmetrical 10 point with a couple extra stickers. Um, and I was like you, I'd always hunted from a tree,
Yeah.
and boom, he sticks me, or I was actually hunting for a doe. I was about done. I'd been there 8 days or 9 days, and I was only planning on staying for 7. So, I had to get back that next morning. Thought, well, I'll just go sit in this ground blind that has some cameras of a lot of does coming by, and I wasn't even thinking when I sat in there, but we were just Mark had shot his buck probably 4 days earlier, maybe 5, whatever it was. And I remember Mark, like or the other Mark, saying, "Wow, look at that deer!" And it was down past this, going towards where this blind was. That's a booner there. Well, fast forward 4 or 5 days, and I go in there. I get all situated in this blind, and it's dark. Just finally get everything where I want it. Knock my arrow. Look out the window to the right, and there's a doe. I thought, oh, good. Maybe I'd get her taken care of early, and I might get on the road today even.
Yeah.
Well, I reached down real quiet, open the window on the other side because she's walking right where I need her to go. So I look down, grab my bow. Yep, it's knocked. Get it up where all I got to do is draw once she comes across. And I look back through that window to the right, and she grew about 14 antler points. That booner, that buck was there,
Yeah.
and he was just following her in. And there was another. I didn't even pay attention to it because it wasn't half the deer that this one was, but it was a solid, I would guess, an 8 point that was fairly heavy.
Yeah.
Um, and he started walking to the left, and this good one, like I said, maybe 12 points, 13, whatever it was, 10 point with stickers. He's just standing there looking, and kind of, you first think, oh, shoot, he picked me up. He's kind of looking right at me. Well, then I'm thinking, well, wait a second. got everything's covered. I'm just going to sit quiet and not move. Well, the doe had walked around while I was fiddling around, and she was already on past my window where I was going to go when those two bucks came up. It kind of spooked her, I guess, is what I'm thinking. And she had already gone by, so he was actually watching her, not me. So I get this thing knocked, and sure as heck, he just textbook right across. I had already ranged a bush out there that was right at 30 feet, 30 yards. I thought, perfect. He goes there, stops broadside, looks down to the left. Just, I mean, you couldn't ask for a better situation. In the back, thump, hit it. And I look at it, I think, God, that's high. Well, went there was maybe 4 specks of blood, and off he went. And I'm positive it went right through his tenderloin.
Mm.
And it was just a bad deal. We did everything. I did everything we could. Matter of fact, I think I told you we even called a guy that had dogs,
Yeah.
and he came up. Oh, he's from a town. I want to say Russell, maybe, a little bit southwest of where we were at. And he said, "Well, it'd be a couple hours." I said, "Well, that's fine." I said, I already let him go for an hour, probably 45 minutes to an hour, and I've tracked as far as I can find blood, and I come to a dead end, and I'm only 50 yards away from where I shot it. So he brought the dog out. It was a good dog. I'm sure it wasn't a dog. He tracked it all the way across the property and went around to the next property, and we called, got permission. They said, "Yeah, go ahead." We got to a point where there was just no more. They go on the Merrill, I guess. And I was very unfamiliar. I was just following. By this time, I'm hunting quail. There's quail everywhere. I'm wishing I had my shot, but um, anyway, never did find him. Never even found another spot of blood, no hair, nothing. Saw a place where he might have turned around. The dog got real deery, I guess. I'm used to birdie, but
Right.
deery. Uh, he just kind of gave up and started going different directions. And come to find out, we did see that deer on camera later on, and yeah, he was perfectly fine.
Yeah.
So that made it go over a little bit easier. I do know now that when I practice sitting down as well.
Yeah.
Just because I don't want to suck miss a really good deer.
Right.
It was going to cost me money because it would have been on the wall too. I already had a good place for it, which was probably my problem. Uh, but lesson learned.
Yeah.
I you know, it's just different angle, different shot, different time of day, whatever it might have been. It just it was about 6 inches off.
Yeah.
I would get. Anyway, that was the most recent. I've had 2 good hunts out there with deer that I got up behind me, and um, I know that you and I had a good hunt out there where we were both successful.
Yeah.
Um, this, um, yeah, we got plenty more that we can talk about deer. That's for sure. Whitetail.
Yeah. I guess early on archery, uh, like you were saying, you were more of a tree stand guy, which I mean, you still will get up there. It's not like you won't get up in a tree anymore. But um, what was your experience, especially like public land, um, for I guess getting up in trees, tree stand hunting?
So yeah, and I actually I would prefer even now going up in a tree. Where we hunt now, we've got ladder stands that are up. And then we've got a couple that are just uh tree stands that are that are up there permanently with steps walking up to them. So those are still there. But to answer your question, I always when we first started, we would take tree stands out, and at the time I had one. My friend had one. We would go out in August, fight the mosquitoes and the bugs and the ticks and everything else, and hang up our one tree stand where we thought maybe there might be one deer go by.
Yeah.
uh, find good trails, um, good passages, uh, water, places. We didn't have cameras at the time. There again, this was shoot, you were just a little guy, so
Yeah.
um, we had both been rifle hunters, new to the archery game. I started with deer, and then he was an elk hunter, and then we both started getting into the archery, and he just did the elk archery, and I did the deer archery, and started telling him some of the cool things that are that you see up in the tree when you're there all day. Um, so that was, cutting the branches, getting it up there, and it was permanent. It stayed there, and we left the camper out there, and we could go back every weekend or take a couple days off work, whatever it may be, and we were set. Then I kind of progressed, graduated, whatever, into a climber,
Hmm.
and traded my seat stand to Mark Ulishny, and he was done with his climber. He wanted a couple. He was going to get probably 3 or 4 or 5 different stands where he could just go out and mount them and have them up where he could just pick and play the wind. And I was still hunting these areas where I would only turn into a weekend warrior, if you will. Um, so I would go up, and if I stayed longer, I'd take the tree stand and climb up the tree, get to where I think, yeah, that's where I want to be, and situated where I had a good shooting path, good shooting lanes, and it really worked out great. At the end of the day, I just climb back down, leave it hooked to the tree, where then the rest of the weekend, if I liked that tree, that spot, I just stayed there for 3 or 4 days.
Yeah.
Where you could always take it off and move. If you up in the tree and see them moving different times of the day, and they were 100 yards one way or the other, you can find a way to get a little bit closer or in a more ideal situation. But never had anybody. I'd always have, not always, but on occasion I'd have guys that were either deer hunters or a lot of duck hunters, pheasant hunters, that walk right underneath the stand.
Yeah.
More times than not, they didn't even know you were there because they weren't looking. They were there for birds.
Right.
Uh, but never really had too much of an issue. I know that there were times in the same area that you would hear stories of guys showing up in there, and they'd set up ladder stands, or they'd set up a tree stand that was, not permanent, but it was there. It wasn't a climbing stand, and had a lock on it or something, and they'd show up, and either it was stolen or vandalized or somebody sitting in it.
Right.
You always have that possibility. There's no leaving your stand and claiming that that's your spot. If somebody else gets to it, you can tell them you want their stand back, and they can tell you to pack sand and, and take things with them, or
Right.
they could get down and you can move your tree stand, but they don't have to leave. So, but that all changed once we started hunting out in Kansas, and have friends that we can hunt their property as well as the land next to them that they watch over. They got permission for,
Yeah.
and it's worked out into a good deal. One of these years, I'll probably get out to eastern Kansas and hunt out there by where we do our bird shoots.
Yeah.
Um, he's got some big deer, and I just did that guiding deal last week, out there at Milford and Sheldon. He spent 2 days this week getting ready for deer season, hanging stands and getting feeders out and setting cameras up, and gonna take his stepdaughter, and hunting. I think that opens up this week. I think he said that she's got a time frame in there that youth can
Mm.
can rifle hunt at the beginning of the year. So they're doing that. So I'm sure there'll be other opportunities. I always still like to look at some of these other different areas, kind of like I always do for duck hunting too, and see if there's some place we can get on that's a manageable hunt.
Yeah.
You know, things are getting. Mom and I were just talking with Chad, our friends that live just down here, that it's gotten to be so bad that people that are younger, to me it's, I'll just keep hunting if I don't get it's not a big deal, but guys that are just not not just getting into it, but really starting to get into it big time, like you are, is
Right.
public, disappearing.
Mm-hmm.
you know, it, it's getting harder and harder, and it's not going to get any easier. So if there is an opportunity to jump on a piece of land that either either you get permission or you can find a lease that's manageable. I prefer it. I'm always looking.
Right.
I do have a lease out in Kansas that is close to where we shoot our deer out there. And there's our deer. Matter of fact, Mark Ulishi shot his out of that lease last year.
Yeah.
Um, it's just not the ideal spot yet, and I think if we keep up with that lease, we're just gonna have to do some things with it. And unfortunately, you can't do things that when you're 7 hours away or whatever.
Right.
But yeah, it's that's public hunting, and if you can get permission on others or gradually work your way into a relationship with a guy that Mark and I, we become good friends just through the Kerwin deal.
Mm-hmm.
And it's you can go out there and do all kinds of hunting, turkeys and doves and ducks,
Right.
deer, you name it, quail, pheasant. Um,
Yeah, the lease deal
oh,
would be a good thing to get into. I think that's becoming a more popular option. A lot of, I mean, a lot of what you'll see on YouTube right now is um, obviously like the public land guys that like stick to public, which is kind of the boat I'm in right now. Then you've
yeah,
got the guys that will go and they do like almost exclusively finding permission pieces, and they'll go door knocking, and they'll knock on hundreds of doors a year just to, I don't know if they've got a target buck or just a target area, and they're gonna go hunt that area. Um, or then the other one that is becoming more popular is these people getting in on leases, and two three
mhm,
guys or whatever jump in on a lease, and it's a type of lease where you're allowed to do whatever you want with the land, and so growing food plots and cutting lanes and manipulating the land to get deer to move through in a certain way and feed in certain areas, and kind of encourage bedding areas and things like that. And so I don't know, the lease to manage a property and manage a herd, I guess a deer herd, deer population on that property is kind of more what I would lean towards if once I do plan on eventually getting to a point where either I own property or lease property, because hunting public all the time is tough. Eventually I'll get to a point where I can find people I know, like you got into with those guys out in Kansas, you know, get to know some people and have permission that way. Not much of the door knocking type unless I really need to, but getting into leases I think is kind of the more appealing next step.
yep, yep. And I know that's you shoot, and it's not just for deer; it's for turkey, it's for pheasant, it's for geese. You name it. It's that's just the way it is. And unfortunately, that's the public land disappearing. Now they're starting to sell even state lands. So
Right.
um, yeah, never know if that's going to go through or not. And even the ones they don't sell, they're so landlocked that same things that you guys have talked about. And I know that you'll continue talking about it because it's a big part of where you're at with your hunting. So
Yeah. Yeah, that is a tough thing, is what public land there is available right now. Some of it's getting diminished, minimized, however you want to word it, taken away. And then, like you were just saying, like the access, you can only get, sometimes, it all depends on how willing you are to break the rules or bend the rules, like to access a certain plot of public. You can only park in like one or two areas just to get into, maybe there's quite a bit of acreage, but like there's only like one or two places where you can actually like park your truck and access it unless you have a boat or something like that. like for here, right here around the lake, like there's like one or two entry points every like 20 miles. And other than that, it's like, yeah, just buy a boat and you can go wherever you want. But the access is very minimized. And then, the amount of land is also minimal. And what you can do in certain areas, it's all changing because, populations are growing, and the population of like Nashville is migrating to different areas around the lake, and it's impacting what you're able to do and what you're not able to do anymore. And so it's all
Yep.
it's all tough to, tough pill to swallow, but you just got to kind of deal with it. And that's what's kind of leading towards eventually, getting more serious about looking for a lease or finding some sort of property you can buy, just because
Right.
get you away from having to deal with that, because it's a headache more than anything.
Yes, it is, and I end up not even doing it because I don't want to deal with headaches. So then I
Right.
just they're fishing.
Yep, exactly.
Lease my land, then I got to lease my lake. So,
Yeah.
but it's all right. It'll one of these times we'll run across the right situation,
Yep.
get a lease, missions, or something else. So,
Yeah, for sure. No, then I mean, if you find a good plot, and it's not in a state that you live in, you can still get like landowner tags or something like that, and things like
right.
that can always help to give you opportunities. So
Yeah. Well, yeah, the two deer I got up on the wall, those will be stories, but I'm gonna have to have a full battery for that, I think.
about to run out of battery on the phone there.
Oh well, yeah, that too. Definitely, I'm down on red, but yeah, there were some good stories. That the one will, well, both of them will. They'll be lifetime memories, that's for sure. So we'll
Yeah.
definitely like to share those with you.
Yeah.
And I know that, but um, and it seems like I always think of more things too every time I tell the stories. So.
Right. Get started on one thing and kind of sidebar off to another, and then it goes down a whole different path. But no, I mean,
Right. Yeah.
whitetail is kind of our thing. Aside from upland birds and fishing, and so we'll
Yeah.
spend a lot more time talking about whitetails. So I guess
Sure.
we can look forward to a handful more episodes of whitetail, and the goods, the bads, the uglies. And so um, I don't know. I feel like that's a good starting point for telling some whitetail stories. So
You betcha.
yeah, well, we'll wrap her up there for this version, and then we'll be coming back soon. And I guess, are you doing any whitetail this year?
Yeah, I drew Kansas again.
Oh, okay, cool. Yep. So
Gonna be a tight window, because we always go right around the opening pheasant season.
yeah.
So I don't know if I'm trying to get out, maybe talk to Mark about going early. Our South Dakota tournament shoot, our competitive bird pheasant is bumped back. It's the same week, but it's always the first weekend maybe of November, but it's like the 6th, 7th, or 7th, 8th,
Mm,
and that's when past I've gone out there. So
yeah, that's
it
prime
might be a thing
rut.
that I go right down to, I go to do my pheasant shoot in South Dakota and then head south from there.
Right.
Um, that's thank goodness I have a wonderful wife that pushes me out the door and just says go do it. So
Right. Encourages it, because that meat is good. Like you were saying, that elk is really good. It's probably the best. But whitetail is up
yeah,
there for sure. So any chance you get
absolutely.
to fill those tags,
Especially
fill the freezer.
corn,
What was that?
especially that Kansas corn fed.
Oh yeah.
They come right out of the. You can see them coming right out of the corn stalks
Yep.
sometimes.
They love it.
Well, good deal.
All right. Well, we will see
I'll,
you here in a couple of days. At least I will see you in a couple of days. But yeah, we'll get another episode here in the next week or two, and we'll just start cranking out some whitetail stories leading up to season and throughout.
perfect.
All right. Well,
Great.
appreciate you guys listening. We'll catch you on the next one.
All righty. Catch you later.